Hello and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Nisha, and I am a product marketing manager here at AppViewX. Our topic for today is 7 NetOps resolutions to make this 2020. The webinar will be presented by Glenn Gray, Senior Solutions Architect at AppViewX. Just a little housekeeping before we begin. If you have any questions, please type them into the Zoom control panel at any time. I will bring them up during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So let's dive right into the webinar. Over to you, Glenn.
Thank you, Nisha. Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Glenn Gray. I want to thank you for taking this time today to hear about AppViewX and our topic of interest today, which is covering 7 network operations resolutions that you could potentially make this year in 2020. So for the agenda today, I want to cover some common network operations, some common NetOps pain points, describe some of those problems that contribute significantly to pain points, and then sort of describe and translate those into some resolutions, some things that maybe you can take forward and try to focus on, and if you identify with some of these pain points or problems within your own environment, maybe seek to resolve. Of course, paint this in a context of the AppViewX platform and some of the features and services that are offered within the platform that could potentially help you and your organization to overcome challenges. And then I'd like to jump over quickly and show you a demonstration of an AppViewX platform and again, describe how it could be used to address particular pain points and problems that are faced commonly in a network ops environment, and then finally open up for a Q&A. So I want to make it sort of brief, limit to a half hour here. So I'm going to kind of speed through a few slides on PowerPoint. Don't want to take away from the demo itself. So network operations pain points, I think everyone identifies with tickets. I know in my tenure, I've spent significant amount of time processing tickets, especially early on in my career. So incidents and outages, that's currently, that's pretty much what it's all about. Defaulting to the lowest common denominator. I know that I heard a lot. Well, it must be a network issue. Why? Well, because it all runs on the network. I've looked at my application. I've looked at my host. I can't figure it out, but yet something's still not working. So must be the network issue. Call NetOps. Let them figure it out. There's also little to no collaboration in that mindset because, again, it all runs over the network, so must be the network. Let them figure it out. Leaves you to troubleshoot in the dark a lot. You get some tidbit of information. Typically, it's something doesn't work. Okay, what specifically doesn't work? Well, I can't get to this. So you're left on a sort of a hunting expedition. And a lot of times, things just result in another workaround. Well, root cause wasn't actually identified and remediated, but we put in a workaround. So works for the time being. And what you're left ultimately with is dealing with a spaghetti dish of multiple workarounds. Nothing's really by design. It's just what it is, So the problem there, you have piecemealing of information gathering. Well, I got a little bit of information, and I got a little bit more information, a little bit more information. So getting a holistic view and having access to all the information so that you can make informed analysis can be challenging. It can be repetitive, quite manually task-oriented. Well, first I went to this device, I evaluated, gathered information. It resulted in no findings, so I go, and then I go on to the next, and I go on to the next. Access restrictions. Well, I got as far as I could go, and then I found out that I couldn't go any further because I'm not responsible for this area. and or it's, you know, it's not under my auspice, it's not under my control, so I couldn't do anything else. Lack of visibility, kind of in the same barrel. Change management and governance requirements. Well, I have to also put in change requests because I did find what the problem is, and now I have to do an emergency change request, and that's going to take me about 45 minutes before it works up the food chain, gets approved, etc. And then communication silos. A lot of times what you get is stopped at the firewall edge, not my problem anymore, forward the ticket, now it's in their bin, I'm done. I know that that was very common in some of the environments that I worked in. Things just get thrown over the fence in the form of a ticket. Reassign ticket, move on, pick up the next one. So some resolutions. How can AppViewX maybe help with overcoming some of those challenges? So one resolution, automate, automate, automate. Really, the goal there is to dramatically reduce the number of errors and speed up the tasks, the iterative tasks of conforming to maybe change management, ticketing requirements, getting visibility into infrastructure. So if you have the ability to automate, you're significantly reducing time to resolution and so forth by doing more in shorter amounts of time. Holistic views, being able to take a strategic approach so that you can analyze your environment, your infrastructure, the services that traverse it much more effectively. Collaborate. If you have the opportunity to not just reassign the ticket, but pass some meaningful information or evaluate it in a contextually aware or more meaningful way so that the development side, the network side, the security side, the system, the operational, if a lot of those boundaries and sort of, I commonly use the term of the lost in translation, you know, if you can sort of, because each one of those silos certainly has their own language, specific terms that relate to their technology, but if you have the ability to improve your collaboration, in my experience, has had a significant impact on being able to isolate and operate and maintain the lifecycle management services. Improving visibility. Certainly when you have clear visibility, it removes a lot of the guesswork. Increasing awareness, being able to detect, solve issues because you're aware of them, you know what the state and status is, you don't have to guess, you're not using isolation and troubleshooting techniques that are only relevant from your vantage point, ping, trace route, curl, etc. That's only going to show you so much information. So if you are more aware of each available platform within an application, within an application's overall path or trajectory of where it goes and where it flows within the infrastructure, certainly have better awareness, better capability. Being security aware, that's certainly going to help you prevent vulnerabilities, reduce risk. What I mean by security awareness is the ability to maybe identify what the security policy parameters are associated at security gateway points, WAF policy structures, firewall gateway structures, even host level security parameters. Making the items immutable. What does that mean? Well, an immutable network infrastructure is basically one that has set definitions and no real workarounds. It's all by design. Whenever it strays from design, there's a oversight or audit type structure that would immediately right set it. And the subtitle there, because even networks can grow warts, that's the whole concept of the workarounds. It's everything. It's most ideal when everything is applied by design, not by workaround or circumstance. So just a real quick introduction as far as AppViewX. What is AppViewX? Low-code network automation and orchestration platform, simplest terms. The company exists across the globe, 7 locations. Some of the salient features, we can provide zero-touch orchestration, multi-cloud, multi-vendor, really infrastructure agnostic. Wherever it is, whatever it is, we can pretty much support it and integrate to it. Context, config, state aware, drag and drop visual workflows to allow the creation, customization of business processes. That then leads to reusable workflows. And then there's security governance, accessibility, the ability to collaborate, to be able to look at your infrastructure from various teams, various technology contributors, stakeholders, and restrict the access and permissions, the functions that they can perform and the elements they can perform them on. And that's through granular role-based access control. Some additional features: application-centric visibility, network security and automation, a real-time network monitoring capability, auditing and compliance, pre and post validations. Are things in a state where I can apply changes, and after I applied changes, are they still working? Key and certificate management. The low-code automation platform. This slide is meant to describe that your multiple stakeholders on the left, different silos, communication, organizational units, can have visibility through the AppViewX platform to the entire infrastructure, the entire ecosystem, and only affect or perform functions on the items which they're authorized to do. And that's through the role-based access control. What infrastructure can we support, regardless of where it is, whether it's cloud, data center, private cloud, on-prem, we have or hybrid. We have the ability to interact with it. And then a large variety of vendor platforms across various service offerings throughout your infrastructure: ADC, firewall, DDI, even ticketing systems, ITSM, certificate authorities. Just a quick example of multi-vendor integration, the ability to create workflow structures so that you're achieving desired specific business outcomes. So as an example, hey, I'm creating a DNS registration workflow structure. I'm going to reserve an IP. I'll handle ticketing within my ITSM. So I'd received a RITM. I'm going to create a change ticket. I'm going to resolve my change ticket. I'm going to register my IP address, create the PTR record and the A record. So let me jump over to an AppViewX instance and sort of give you firsthand perspective of how some of this can be performed. Let me just minimize here, and I'm going to go over to so as I log into my web user interface, I think maybe I typed the password incorrect, so let's try this again. Or just refresh my page. That was it. So from welcome to AppViewX, I'm going to navigate from the AppViewX drop-down menu. Now, as I mentioned, through those 7 topics, basically covering automation, big picture view, collaboration, improving visibility, increasing awareness, some of those items. How would AppViewX assist with some of that? I want to touch first on the control center. Now, within the control center, I can identify with the application-centric view of the infrastructure that I've managed. So the AppViewX platform can manage ADCs, firewalls, DDI platforms, GTM, certificate authorities, web servers, Linux, Windows. So what you're able to do at that point is you have this centralized view, a database, if you will, of the infrastructure where your applications and services are deployed. So how is that empowering? Well, if you think about it from an operator's perspective, you are forced to go out if you don't have a centralized collection and view of all of these resources in your infrastructure, then you're forced to go and explore and find the information out on your own. So you might have to visit the ADCs, you might have to visit the firewalls, you may have to visit the ITSM platforms to see if your CI item that someone referred you to is on a specific IP, or so on and so forth. Starting with Control Center, let's say that you have some tidbit of information such as an IP address or an alias reference towards the name of the application instance, and you could search just on that specific tidbit of information. So as I take an example, in my demo environment, I have some application instances, one in particular named Tom1 as in Tomcat. So if I just typed in Tom1, I'm presented with a table of information and objects, starting with a parent object and then associated child objects. And in this case, it's identifying a wide IP instance on my GTM, my F5, and I see child instances there. But I want to get a clearer perspective on this. So if I click the object, it then builds a topology view of the application instance, showing you the wide IP instance, the fully qualified domain name, and I can quickly access state and status and perform some automation functions on that particular object, maybe disabling it, maybe enabling it, so on and so forth. Let's say that I have a disaster recovery event where something has been deleted by accident. I can do a restore of that particular object directly from the screen. So already this has touched on several pain points that we were describing in the slide section of the presentation. Well, first of all, bigger picture. I have very quickly identified, based upon some tidbit of information, someone called and said, Tom1's down. Oh, okay. So I can react by pulling up what the application-centric view of Tom1 looks like. And I can see that, okay, it's distributed across 3 data centers, and there are 2 pool members in this data center, 2 pool members in this data center. Looks like there's actually just a virtual server. Maybe this is pending deployment and hasn't been completed as of this time. It looks like maybe there's some health check related items down between the actual LTM layer virtual server, which is on an A10, and the GTM instance, because it's showing red. It's showing it's offline, but it's enabled. So something tells me that the health check's not passing. So maybe there's something intermediate there between the GTM layer and the LTM layer, because well, first of all, I could answer the question, what is the health check? And as I look at the configuration, let me go back up to the pool member item, I can view the config of that particular resource to identify what is the health monitor associated with this object. Again, I could perform functions like enable and disable of the service instance. So if I'm needing to do maybe rolling restarts, I'm going to redirect traffic all to this data center, away from this data center. So I could disable this particular virtual service at the LTM layer, which would redirect the traffic from that IP address in the GTM over to the alternate service delivery paths. Now, improving the collaboration, traditionally this is handed over to network operations by system administration or application administrators, and it ties up the resources of the network operator or engineer to sit with the application team and monitor their process. they're having to do rolling restarts or code updates or whatever to the application system platforms themselves, and there's virtually no interaction except on the front and back of that by network operations, and that would be to support the simple enable and disable of this instance. So you have a skilled network operator having to idly sit by while the actual work is being done to affect the service. So when you have a platform like AppViewX, you could develop the role-based access control assignment, meaning you allocate just the resources. So I can allocate just this application to a particular team that's responsible for Tom1 and allocate only the function of, say, view and disable. Maybe not backup and restore, but through the role-based access control definition, you can extend as a self-service directly to the application owner and not tie up the resources of network operators for mundane tasks of push the button on, push the button off, effectively turning on and off a light switch. So hopefully you can identify with some value in that proposition. Let me take you to some other locations. How about AppVision? Now, AppVision is an extension of Control Center. Control Center was primarily ADC focused. Now, with AppVision, the system has visibility into all of these infrastructure resources: firewall, compute, ADC, DDI. In this view, it creates objects dynamically that are application centric, meaning now these are at the very top of the list here just because it's sorting according to number and then identity. But as I scroll down, I start to see some recognizable FQDNs here. And so if I take a look at an FQDN, for example, in my demo environment, I have an application instance called dev APCH1, dev nginx1, and so forth. But when I click on these items, I'm brought to a holistic application-centric topology view, which also incorporates not just the ADC, but the compute instances, the firewall security gateways, the certificate authority or certificate binding instances. Let me try and find another one because that one's pretty sprawled out. I want to find one that has not been sprawled. Well, that may not happen, but what I'm seeing here is the application from top down, get this out of the way, and the components within your infrastructure that it would traverse. So as I rearrange a couple of these things here really quickly, sort of going to bring my firewalls together. Oh, it looks like I have an obsolete device, which means some of these components were changed, such as firewall security policy definitions, and it had previously discovered them. Now they're no longer in the configuration, so I'm just going to allow the system, I'm going to authorize that the system deletes those obsolete items. Yeah, this is much cleaner now. There we go. So here I have my logical view of the fully qualified domain name instance, and apologize for the sprawl again, but it does need to be cleaned up by dragging and positioning the icons. So it's allowed to traverse through these 3 firewall gateway instances, and I can access the firewall gateway instances by viewing, creating, modifying. Now I'm logged in as an administrator, so I have these capabilities to do things such as modify my security policy, create it, delete it. I can look at the particular details. The green icon indicator is just indicating that the communication between AppViewX and that particular platform is online, but if I'm needing to inspect and troubleshoot, I can see the unique security definitions for the applications, the specific application flow on that particular gateway. Go back over here. So like if I'm looking at the Juniper, just as I was looking at the Palo Alto a moment ago, and I'm looking at the particular policy definition, I can see all of the security related details that are associated with that policy definition. So when I'm isolating and troubleshooting, I don't have to go all over and log in individually to each item to quickly evaluate and assess. And this creates the ability to sort of collaborate between network operations, SecOps, and so forth to ultimately hone in on what's the issue. So when you're looking at destination address lists, you can see specifically what is contained in that list. Oh, I can see this is opened up to subnet 1, subnet 2, and subnet 3. I can even take direct action from this component by, say, issuing requests like ping, traceroute to do additional isolation and troubleshooting. I can get directly to a CLI or web console of, in this case, the Juniper SRX. I can see the number of hits since last refresh of this particular item. I'm given a scoring for optimization, just a scoring value to assess risk. So you have high risk situation if you had, source any, destination any, application any, right? That's an any, extremely vulnerable. But in this case, it's scoring as a 3, which just indicates that high ports are open. So again, back at this holistic view, there's a tremendous number of automation functions that can be taken on all layers as far as the security gateways, the ADC platforms. Here in this case, we've got the F5. I can perform functions to modify, add, delete on the virtual service itself. I can see details. I can issue troubleshoot commands. Might be a curl statement, might be IP route show, ping, traceroute, etc. So similar to what we saw in Control Center, you have the same structural view. I can do enable, disable. I can view the current persistent records, clear those persistence records, restore configuration items. The system can be designed or configured to do routine config backups. That could be on a daily, weekly, monthly, even multiple times per day. So you have your archive available. There's actually quite a few more functions within the app vision, but I do want to be cognizant of time. So let me just describe a bit about the role-based access control setup, because I had talked a bit about improving the visibility and improving collaboration. So primary feature that opens up that feature set is going to be the role-based access control. Now, under the account sub-item is where you're defining roles. For authentication, you can leverage your existing IAM, identity and access management structure, to authenticate externally your users. That could be Radius, TACACS, LDAP, Active Directory, SAML, really doesn't matter. And what you're doing there is the user comes to the web user interface or the REST API of AppViewX and is authenticated externally, and the attribute that is most commonly returned is what group or what group organization that the authenticated user is associated with. So let's say that, and in this case, I'm defining roles and resources to map those group orientations to. So you have a user that logs in and they're associated with, say, DevOps, or they're an approval authority, they're in leadership, they're in NetOps, they're a PKI administrator, they're in SecOps, whatever the case may be. Whatever group they're associated to, you're mapping what functions those groups can perform. So here are radio check items that basically map to every function that can be performed within AppViewX. When you're creating a role, you can start with a template role because we do offer multiple template roles and then just customize from there. But if the template roles match with the functions that that you intend to allocate and assign to that particular group, like NetOps, SecOps, DevOps, then there's no additional changes to be made. But otherwise, yes, you can manipulate, you can clone and create a new and just enable or disable the object items that you intend to grant as far as functionality. So for enabling and disabling, as we saw in Control Center, I can simply allow or disallow those particular functions. The other component to the role-based access control first is functions and then resources. So what can you do and then what can you do them on? What actual objects or resources within your infrastructure can you apply these functions to? So if I look at, again, NetOps as my example, in my access control list, I have all the categories of infrastructure items that are in the AppViewX platform database. So if I look at, say, ADC, as a network operator, maybe you will want to allow, well, the concept here is that you're able to define on a regex string value the or read-write permissions to all of the objects within your ADC environment. So if I'm looking at all of the 215 objects, that's including virtual servers, pools, pool members, profiles, SSL profiles, everything that resides on an ADC is a unique object. So it's very, very granular. Everything that is on the ADC is a unique object. And so you can define within a regex expression. So if I'm just wanting to give them permission to dev something, items, then you can specify in a regex expression it's just dev, or begins with prod, and you're seeing there that the count items is reduced, and I could allocate read write to prod, but read to everything else, and so forth. That concept applies to everything. All of the items that you're seeing here, we can manage SSH keys, manage individual devices. So if you're in NetOps, you're able to actually push code updates and things like that to, say, F5 infrastructure, even down to the application-specific view where I was demonstrating in the App Vision. So under the applications, that'll also list all of the applications that were identified under the App Vision, as we saw there. So if you're an application support team member, I could grant you read-write capability to the App Vision view for only those apps which are assigned to you and your organization, which you're responsible for. So if they were just the Nginx items, I could just identify Nginx, give you read-write to those, place that into my filter, and when those members of that organization log in, they're only going to have those permissions. So that covers what I wanted to demonstrate today. I hope that you found some of those features to match with some challenges perhaps that you faced in your organization or in your business environment. And so I'd like to open up for questions and answers. I'm going to go back to the Zoom meeting and listen for any questions that might be posted, if you wouldn't mind. And also, Nisha, help me out there if I missed something.
Yeah, Glenn, I'm right here.
Great, thank you. Have we had any questions come across as of yet?
So let me see. Okay, so we have one. Does the platform work in the cloud?
Yes.
That is one question.
Yes, the platform can be deployed on-prem or in cloud. There's multiple ways which we can deploy it as a Linux-based platform. So it would run on either a VM Linux host that you provide, or we can deploy with an OVA instance. Most commonly, we have CentOS deployment, RHEL, Ubuntu, but that really doesn't matter. And it's a microservice-based architecture, meaning that each service instance runs independently. So we can deploy in a container style environment as well. You have the web front end, you have Mongo database, you have Elasticsearch for analytics. There's also gateway agents for communicating to infrastructure. And when I say agents, I'm not referring to installing agents within the devices that you're managing. I'm just referring to the gateway agent service that is communicating with the infrastructure. How does AppViewX communicate with infrastructure? It's either over HTTPS and the API of a particular platform or SSH directly.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. I think your answer covers the next question as well, which is, does it use an agent to operate on the network? I think you just explained it.
Right. It does not use an agent. There's one exception. Since it is a Linux-based platform, it does use an agent to communicate with Windows devices. Now, it does not require an agent to communicate with a unique agent on each Windows device that you want to manage, but instead, one agent per domain. And I'm referring to Active Directory domain. So if you have a forest with multiple domains, you would have at least one agent per domain. That agent would then be able to communicate with the rest of the hosts within the domain over your native WinRM protocol.
Okay, Glenn, thank you for explanation. And yeah, that's it, Glenn. There are no more questions. So
Okay.
I think, yeah, we can wrap it up.
All right. Well, fantastic. Thanks everyone who has attended, and look forward to discussing more, meeting you potentially out in the community.
All right, Glenn. Thank you. Thank you for such a wonderful session. And the attendees who joined us for the webinar today, thank you. I hope you found the session insightful. And we hope to see you again at our next webinar, the topic and date of which will be announced shortly. Once again, thank you and have a good day.
Bye-bye.